I wanted to make a quick video on this thought that I just had related to Second Peter chapter 1. And I've made at least two videos about this set of verses before. You can find them on the channel if you're curious, but this is just one of those things where the more you think about it, the more you concentrate on it, the more you try to do it in your life, the Lord continues to teach about it. So for me, I've been really pondering and thinking about faith and really trying to understand it. And one thing that has been extremely helpful is to understand that faith is the process. Faith is the process where you bring what you desire that you've only imagined into reality. So it's the process by which you obtain your desires for real. And there's a lot that could be said about that, but I think that's sufficient for the purpose of this video that I want to make. And so there are lots of things that you can only imagine, and the way that you go about getting them is by exercising faith. All blessings that you receive, all outcomes that you receive, all things that you get in this life and the next come as a result of faith, of having desire, figuring out how to get your desire, and then pursuing that path until you get it. And that's really interesting. So the reason I bring this up is I've been thinking on this verse 5 specifically, right? So it says, and besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue. And it's been impressed upon me for a long time that these are additive and sequential attributes. But the way that I want to look at it today is that these things are the way that your faith is honed in order to make it fruitful in the knowledge of Jesus. Because faith is the method by which anybody gets anything that they desire. This includes the way that you get things that are not good. This includes the way that Satan actually goes about his work. He has a desire, and he works doggedly according to his reasons to get what he wants. So when you understand that, you understand that faith is the mechanism by which you can obtain anything that you want. The problem is that what you want is most of the time wrong, and it especially is wrong when you have not gone through the process of repenting of your sins and seeking God to teach you what is right and what is valuable. And so this is why the very first thing that you add to your faith is virtue, because virtue is the lens through which you channel faith. That means that you're going towards something that's actually good. You bring to pass something virtuous. You bring to pass something that benefits, that is more like God. And that's why in the preceding verse, in verse 4, you have these promises for those that have obtained faith, that by these you might be partakers of the divine nature. And what is the divine nature? That's God's nature. That's how God is. So you partake of how God is, and you escape the corruption that is in the world through lust. When we say through lust, this is not talking about something that's explicitly related to sexual things. That's just a subset. Lust is when you desire to have things without paying the requisite price and going through the actual path to get them. In other words, it's desiring things without exercising faith. And so if you are only lusting for things, if you wish that you were in heaven and had heavenly things and you don't want to live any of the commandments of God, well, you're just lusting after heavenly things. That's not the method and the path to obtain those things. If you want to be fruitful in the knowledge of Jesus, if you want to have a personal relationship with the Lord and stand in his presence, and you're not willing to exercise the faith necessary to get to that point in the process of becoming what it must happen in order for you to be like that, then you're just lusting for those things and you'll never receive them because you can't in that way. And so the very first thing that you do when you have faith, when you realize that anything that you want can be yours, if you figure out how to get it and pursue that path, the world opens up to you and there's nothing that you can't receive. The very first thing that you add to that is virtue. And that virtue channels that faith towards something good, because there is only so much time in this life, and you can't be spending all of your time going after just the desires of your heart that aren't righteous. Now, let me give you an example of a way that these things get twisted if you don't exercise faith with virtue. So I was just thinking about this while I was making lunch, and I like to cook, and it has become a hobby of mine and also something that I was very interested in and I enjoyed learning how to do. And so in my mind, I exercised faith. I had a desire for good food, right? I wanted to make things that taste good and that are healthy. And well, honest, let's be honest here, okay? I had a desire to eat things that taste good. That's it, right? And there's nothing that tastes better than something that's homemade and made really, really well. And so, what is faith? Faith is the process by which I turned my desire for brownies, let's say, into an actual pan of brownies that I then ate. Now, what's the problem? Well, if I don't add virtue to my faith, which brings about basically any food that I want, like my cooking skills and my means are such that if I want to make something, I could, and I do from time to time. And so if I do not add virtue to that faith, all I'm making are like terrible things for me. I'm making unnecessarily rich desserts. I'm making unnecessarily unhealthy food and dinner. What I should be doing is adding virtue to my faith and using my skill and my knowledge to cook the best tasting versions of the healthiest food possible, right? So you take something healthy, which generally has this idea that it is not appetizing, and with great skill, you could make a healthy food taste good. What does that do? That actually is a benefit to everybody, because now not only are they getting the nutrition that's good, but they also desire to eat it. And that's a win-win. And that's the power of faith with virtue. So if I add virtue to my faith in my desire to bring about good food, now I've made healthy, good tasting food for everyone. But if I just have faith and I let my desires go wherever they will through the natural man, now we've all got brownies and cookies on our hands, and we don't need those. So, and if you can apply that same progression, once you've added virtue to your faith, you need to add knowledge, because you don't actually know what good things you could do. You don't know the level of righteousness and the good that you could bring about in the world until you start bringing about a little bit. So you add knowledge of what there is that you could actually do. You start to expand your desires, expand your imagination, and God helps with that as well by putting you in contact with things that expand your view. Because his eyes have seen all the good things that can happen, and he knows what they are, and he desires for them to be brought to pass. He just needs someone to exercise faith to do it. And so once you do that, you have to add temperance to your knowledge, because temperance tells you that you can't burn all of your energy on these things that are astronomically out of reach without exercising care in where you're diverting your energy. So you might have the desire to do 3 impossibly good things, but only the energy and means to do one of the 3. So you need to be able to exercise temperance in determining which one you should exercise. And you add to that patience. Now, faith requires patience to be honed, because most things, not most, all things that are of the highest value take a long time to achieve. You cannot achieve a beautiful physique and a healthy physique with strong muscles in a day. No matter how hard you exercised, and no matter how carefully you ate for a day, you would only make incremental progress towards a goal like that. It takes years. And there are some good things that take entire lifetimes of patience. And so, why you add patience to your faith is you begin to desire things that have that take much longer to see fruition, and you have to persevere in that patience, because there's nothing more painful than seeing a good thing, knowing how to get it, and despite everything that you can do in the now, not being able to achieve it. And so faith lets you endure through that trial. And once you have patience, you add godliness to that, and you start to see things on the godly level of desire, and you start to desire the things that God desires more and more. Your faith is exercised in the way that only He would also exercise it in your life. Once you do that, you exercise brotherly kindness because there's only so far that you can go in searching for things for yourself before you hit a limit to the amount of joy and the amount of good things that you can obtain through faith. And so the natural outbranching and increasing of that is to extend that faith to the goodness and well-being of other people. And that's brotherly kindness. And why brotherly kindness becomes charity is because charity is brotherly kindness with no limits. It no longer counts the cost to self, it just counts the benefits to others. And so if you truly take your faith and add all these things to it, picture the head of a spear where you're sharpening the spear, and every single one of these things that you add is another stroke of the whetstone on your spear, and it's getting sharper and sharper and sharper. And suddenly, by the end of verse 7 here, when you've added charity to your faith is so sharp that it's the sword of truth, and it obtains all things, and you obtain knowledge of Jesus Christ because that's how He is. He has faith unto charity and exercises it for all people. So I hope you understand that example, and I just wanted to say that quickly. Apologies for the impromptu talk, and hope it is understandable. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care.